Hey, soul family, welcome to the channel or welcome back, whichever applies. I'm Teresa and I'm happy that you're here. Today, I want to talk about something that I mentioned in a video yesterday. I think I raised some questions, so I wanted to bring a little bit more transparency or clarity to what I said and just be a little bit transparent about who I am, kind of share some thoughts and information if it helps somebody out there. One of the soul family, John, asked a question that when I had mentioned in the video yesterday about wearing bindi or wearing the hair wrap, and he was saying, "Well, I wasn't aware that that was something, I didn't know that was something that was necessary." And let's be clear, it's not absolutely necessary. I'm not telling anybody that they have to do that, but I will kind of give you some of my rationale as to why I was led to do it because it's completely an intuitive thing. Some people say you should, some people say you shouldn't. The reasons why some people do are different from reasons from others. So I always feel like, especially with this spirituality thing in this day and time, in the age of Aquarius, we're genuinely swimming in uncharted waters. So I don't think there's anything that anybody, well, maybe there's a few things in dark occult stuff that I could say unequivocally, you probably don't want to do that. But I mean, as far as the things that we do, um, like yesterday, the Christian lady was busy telling me about how a Christian can't wear bindi, but yet Christians have no problem wearing a cross. And here's the thing, for me personally, once I understood the deception of organized religion and reached a certain point in my studies and kind of realized they're all the same, but they can all be different, I take the good out of each one so that I can still maintain a level of respect for them. But I don't subscribe to any religion. I can respect all of them and don't have to subscribe to any of them. So, and I think, if I'm quite honest, I believe some of that comes to some past life stuff that may have kicked in. I have always, whether before, long before I could say I subscribed to the idea of reincarnation or any of that, even as a child, I had certain affinities that were hard to explain. For example, I've mentioned it before, I was raised Jehovah's Witness. They really don't get into anything like that. No idolatry, no anything. Ain't really even paying a whole lot of attention to like the ancient mysteries and things like that. But even as a child, I was fascinated with ancient Egypt and primarily Thoth. He scared me a little bit. The idea of this Birdman, whatever, truly, but was still inexplicably drawn to him. And like I said, from the age of 4 till about the age of 7, I had a recurring dream in which an image showed up to me that I honestly didn't understand what it was at the time. But by the time I got to about 50, 51, 52, I found out that the image that I had been seeing in my what I thought was a dream was probably me as a youngster seeing through the other side of the veil, because the image that I saw was of the Devi, which is prominent in Hindu and Vedic scriptures. Always from the time of a child had a very strong affinity to Asian things and cultures, primarily ancient Chinese. Is not, like I said, and I didn't get like heavily into any of it because a lot of that will be considered religious stuff, so it was kind of off limits for me, but I was always fascinated by those things. So when I got to a certain point in my awakening and I started being interested in salwar kameez, and I wasn't necessarily opposed to the idea of the Muslim hijab. Even I'll be perfectly honest, once upon a time, for a little while, I even considered wearing the burqa and the niqab so that the only thing you would see would be this. If I hadn't lived in Florida where it was 4,000 degrees outside, I probably would have. But I also realized there's a difference in cultural appreciation and appropriation. I know that people carry on a lot about that. So I refrained from wearing the burqa and the niqab because that would be more of a religious issue than me just loosely wearing the scarf or a casual style of hijab when I chose to. Now recently, we're gonna move forward to now. And again, I ask different ones from these cultures before I just started doing anything, before I started wearing salwar kameez and Punjabi pajamas and things like that. I asked several people from India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, whether they would find that offensive for me to wear those garments, and they assured me it would not. And as far as the bindi, I refrain from wearing the red dot or the saffron dot because I am not Hindu. That is very specific to the Hindu religion, and sometimes they'll wear the plain dot for older women. I wear the jeweled hijab, which are more accepted as a fashion statement around the world, but it's still kind of sort of, for me, it serves that purpose without venturing all the way into all of the deeper religious meanings into the Hindu traditions. Although I must say, when you look at and again, I encourage anybody to look into the meanings and origins of some of these things. With the bindi, it is said that that is, I mean, of course, it covers, it does a couple of things. It protects the third eye, but it also focuses energy to the third eye, and it represents the enlightenment or the opening of the third eye for Lord Shiva. Now, I have a strong affinity with Lord Shiva as well. Didn't understand why until a couple of years ago when I started kind of connecting these dots and got to this point in the scenario and came to understand that they they can't really, if you look it up, like the general AI answer will tell you something different, but when you really start digging and looking, there's a correlation between Lord Shiva and Lord Enki. Enki is Shiva in the Hindu pantheon. Like Krishna is represents Yeshua in the Hindu pantheon. So I got a right. I literally have a spiritual right as an Anunnaki oracle priestess. I have a spiritual right to wear the bindi if I choose to. But in modern times, a lot of people wear them just because they want to. They don't have to. you know, I became more aware of it, especially since I'm being called to be more in the public eye, doing what I'm doing here on the channel and all. I'm also aware that some of I don't want to call them enemies because truthfully, I don't believe or want to believe I have any enemies, but I do know there are some people in my past, my personal past, that do know me, that have less than my best intention at heart. And some of those people watch my content. Therefore, I choose to shield or limit or govern so that I can control what comes in and out through my third eye, as well as what they can see. I know for a fact I'm under spiritual attack. I stay in a salt bath and keep, like I say, Christians can sit there and knock all of that if they want to. I wear the red cord. This goes back to some Buddhist teachings for protection. Now, Christians have their idols. They don't want to acknowledge them as idols. I don't see any of these things as idols. I see them as tools. I believe in color therapy. I understand that crystals have certain properties. That's why I keep certain crystals around me and on my person, and I actually use them. And when it comes down to going out, once I reached a place, going back to 2020, again, when the whole world was going mad and doing their thing and all that, I was spending hours every day in barefoot meditation outside in the grass, sitting less than 1,000 feet away from the Gulf of Mexico, breathing in all of that good prana and adamantine particles and barefoot meditating. And I reached a point where I started literally balancing my chakras. Same thing I was spending if I wasn't outside meditating. I had nothing else to do. If I wasn't outside meditating, we had a big old deep bathtub, and I was doing salt baths 2, 3, sometimes 4 times days out of the week for hours, just soaking in there, listening to meditation music, doing visualizations, sitting in these salt baths, taking clearing my chakras, purging all kinds of stuff, doing all kinds of layers of shadow work. And it took me years of shadow work. But at the end of all that, once I started balancing my chakras and clearing some of those things, it left me very, very sensitive to energies. I was a very imbalanced empath, and I had all kinds of narcissists and sociopaths and just generally not nice people clinging on to my energy for dear life. And they about took me down. Like I made that mention yesterday of Mr. Incredible with all the bubble things on him. That's exactly how I was. So once some of that stuff got off, it left me in a very vulnerable place. It's more comfortable for me when I go out in public, especially well, sometimes if I'm just going to the whatever, just going to the convenience store, what have you, I may go out there and not cover my head. But if I know I'm going to be out amongst a lot of people where I may have to interact with all kinds of types of strangers, it's a lot more comfortable for me if I cover my head. It's kind of like putting on a sweater when the room is a little too chilly. Same difference. But for somebody who has taken the time to open their crown, balance their chakras, open their crown, open their third eye, open their soul star. My energy signature, I would imagine if you looked at it through Kirlian photography, is considerably larger, and my aura probably looks dramatically different than the average person on the street. And I have to protect that. I had an eye-opening experience, I should say, a couple of years ago. And I'll go ahead and tell it because it's a personal story, but I don't have to name people specifically. But I because I didn't know any better and because I had no actual blood family of my own, I maintained a very toxic relationship with my ex's family. And again, I'm not saying they're bad people, I'm really not, but considering how he treated me, and considering what I saw and felt and understood but could not process at the time from how his mother treated me, I honestly should have severed myself completely from both of those energies a long time ago. But we were still on that just remain friends. And to some degree, we had to because we had children together. But I stayed a lot closer to the family than I should have because I allowed myself to believe this lady when she said that she was like a mother to me. Because initially I was friends with the females in the family before I ever met or got involved with my child's father. But anyway, I had been away from all of that, him, her, the family, everything for years. Like I said, well, I've been doing all this healing and growing and all of that. And I got invited to a weekend where I was going to be back in my hometown. So they welcomed me to come and stay with them. And I did and everything. And we had a function going on and they were doing their thing like she normally does. And I'm not saying she did anything different, but she showed who she really was in some ways that used to really have me a little traumatized and that I couldn't see when I was younger. But here we are 30 years later, but I'm in a different place with my energy. And when she got busy doing her thing, and mind you, it wasn't even directed at me, but I just witnessed some stuff that triggered me and took me back to that place. But it was the first time I had felt that kind of negative energy in a room. It felt like chicken wire being dragged across my skin. It felt like all the oxygen was being sucked out of the room. And I literally had to go outside of that house and I was gasping to catch my breath. And I started crying uncontrollably. My adult son came out and helped comfort me and help me see some things and balance that whole family dynamic and things and get some perspective and healing over what I was witnessing. But I had never, I had not been around those kinds of energies since I had spent all of that time doing all that work and the salt bath and the this and the that. And I had literally just stripped all of that stuff off of me and truthfully taken too much of the crud of the world's energy off of me. So when I came around that kind of energy, it was uncomfortable, but it taught me the need to protect my energy. So after that, I was like, oh, this is a real thing, you know? I, I I I didn't think about what I was doing while I was out there doing Donna Eden's thing, and like I said, I literally go out there and open those energy centers intentionally, and do the cranial massage, and do all of this and that, do all of these things to activate those energy centers. Well, when they're active, and you go out there in the street, you gonna pick that up. But you are an antenna. And there are some folks that generally say your hair is an antenna, but even if you shave your head bald, once you tended to your energy and open certain things, you're an antenna we are all anyway, we are transmitting and receiving mechanisms. So for me, once I understood that I'm setting out on this mission, if you will, to be the clearest possible channel, one spirit let me know what the assignment was. Cause see, I didn't know what I was doing. Spirit, like they say, be careful what you ask for because you just might get it. I answered the call back in 2008. I didn't even know what I was answering for real. And at the time, I thought I was answering Yahweh's call because that's the programming I was under. But I tearfully and respectfully told God, or what I understood God to be at the time, that if He made me prepared for the mission, showed me what to do, and helped me get ready for it, that I would serve. I would serve humanity. I would do whatever he wanted me to do. I literally, like I say, I had gotten baptized under two different sects of Christianity, and I knew that wasn't working for me. But that still didn't mean that I didn't want to serve and be pleasing, so to speak, to what I understood or thought I understood God to be. Now that's morphed over time, and now I'm serving the collective, and I ain't mad, but this is my work. And in order to do that, especially if I'm going to be a tarot reader and a spontaneous channel and all of those things, I need to keep my energy as clear as I can. So I protect it. I protect my third eye, and I wrap my head. Now, obviously, you ain't got to do none of that, or you can do as much or as little of it as you're comfortable with. I just share with you what I do, what I was inspired and led to do, and Spirit will lead you accordingly. But yeah, you don't have to do it. But if you do the research, or you're feeling so inclined, understand that's probably your guides pointing you in that direction for a reason. Same thing. Now I'm gonna tell you one that I haven't necessarily done just yet, but I know I have to. And hold on, I had wrote down a couple little things that I wanted to mention. No, that's it. Because I'm, like I said, I'm not even getting into that MK Ultra stuff. I'm not saying it ain't a real thing, conspiracy. I believe it is, but that's a whole nother ball of wax. I had enough reason to do it spiritually without worrying about MK Ultra and all of that. So yeah, I'm not gonna say I'm not able to be hypnotized, but I'm not easily hypnotized. And because I unplugged from mainstream television and radio around 1999, 2000 ish. Most of that stuff, when I was unplugged from it for so long till a few years ago, Spirit let me know, no, 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 it's time for you to kind of look at some things in the world. So for a while, I kind of immersed myself back into some more secular programming just to see, and it was so easy to see the programming that it just doesn't entertain me anymore. There's very few shows, even if I have a chance to, I might go back and watch some old classic TV for the ha ha of it if it's some, comedy or whatever. But once I had been away from mainstream television and then plugged back into it for a very short while, it immediately you can see that it is programming. So I just choose to steer clear of it. Um, and if somebody, like I said, later on down the line, we may get more into like breath work and the meditation stuff and all of that if you're interested in it. Let me see. Mm-mm-mm-mm-mm. One, oh, one of the other things that I do, and again, you don't have to, but I keep, like, especially when I'm working around here, I keep incense burning, but it's not just anything. It ain't the what is the stuff you get down at the gas station or whatever, which I'm not saying there's nothing, again, me personally, I've gotten my system by once I'm starting to get some of these chemicals and stuff out, my system has gotten very sensitive to a lot of the commercial. Well, I guess all of them are considered commercial incense, but the carbon-based, perfumey, opium, sex on the beach, and all them kind. I can't really use that kind of incense. I actually most of the time I use one of the holy woods, and I usually try to use something like this, which is a coreless incense. It doesn't have that black charcoal stuff with a little scent powder wrapped around it. This is a pressed resin with some of the oils and stuff. This one is like Palo Santo. I have some that's frankincense and myrrh. I use some dragon's blood, those types of things. I definitely always, like I said, burn Palo Santo and sage. I have several agarwood incenses that are like that, but I tend to, especially when I'm doing work where I'm flowing with spirit, I keep incense going pretty much. Sometimes I even make my own candles, which, if that's something that y'all are interested in, I was considering getting back into that. I actually work with crystals and stuff too. So I, do meditate under the full moon or the new moon with my stones and then make candles, infuse Reiki into them and things like that. But those are things that I knew a long time ago, even before I got to this point in the journey. I've been telling people for about a decade. I know that if I had grown up, if I had been living a couple hundred years ago, I'd be living at the edge of the village somewhere. And of course, everybody would come to see me if they were sick, and they'd probably want to burn my house down if the crops failed. I'm probably what you would consider a white witch. I don't in practice. I don't subscribe to any form of witchcraft. That is completely off limits for me in this go around in the spiritual walk that I'm on. But I've been dabbling with herbs and crystals and things like that since I was like 17, 18 years old. So I know I would have been seen as a witch because I am a natural healer. I guess what do they call that? A hedge witch, basically an herbal healer. Because, and again, just looking to help those that I love, and they be going to the doctors and they spending all their money and the tests and the surgeries and the x-rays and all that, and I'm down there at the health food store looking at volumes, trying to cross-reference different herbs and stuff, and I'm making up different teas and whatnot. And some of them were so good till doctors actually asked me for what I was doing. My sister had a situation like that. Her kidneys were failing to the point that she did have to go on emergency dialysis for a while, was in the hospital and some more stuff. We had gone to Michigan, and by the time we got back to Florida, her legs were so swollen the doctors had to cut her jeans off of her. Didn't know what was going on. She had a lot of other health issues, but what they were doing for her in the hospital to try to save her kidneys was not working. And I asked permission if I could make some tea for her. And once I started giving it to her, within 3 days, she was home. And a year later, he saw another patient that presented with the same symptoms. He sent word through her, called her, his office called her and asked me if I would write down this, the herbs that I use to help her. And he recommended them to another patient. So I know I have, certain gifts Never really thought I was going to be using them for the public, but I'm honored to. I just, like I say, I grew up in an environment where I did all those things, but people looked at me as weird and strange, and I never felt worthwhile or seen or that anybody was interested in the things that I have to offer. But here we are. We're in the age of Aquarius where not all my weird quirkiness actually has a use, and I'm loving it. But the other thing, the other tool that I want to mention before we get off of here, because I've gone on long enough, but it's fasting. And I've mentioned it several times in other videos that I've done for the collective. If you're getting that notion in meditation, or it keeps coming to your mind, or those videos are popping up in your feed or what have you, pay attention to that. And I'm saying that from firsthand experience as somebody that's been very hard headed. When I by around 2018, I started getting the notion that I should do the big fast, the 40 days. Now, I the type person, I'm gonna do a whole lot of reading and a whole lot of videos and all that because that's just who I am. Because of that, I started doing intermittent fasting off and on, and it did work. I lost like 80 pounds through intermittent fasting. Don't look and judge now, because like I said, this past few years, sadly, through holding on to the wrong kind of job, and I got back to a whole bunch of emotional eating, and I've gained every bit of that weight back. So I'm back to square one. But the big fast, I didn't understand why Spirit was pushing me to do it, because they saw some things coming down the pike for me that I couldn't see. Not only for spiritual reasons, I've mentioned it before, 40 is Enki's number. Yeshua did a 40-day fast as part of his initiation. That is when he became Christos. He was not Christos when he went into the wilderness. He was Isa ben Nazariah at that point, but he literally, in that 40-day fast, he finished his ascension and became Christos on the other side of that fast. Buddha fasted 40 days. They said Muhammad did too, but I don't know. With the way Muhammad came out the gate fighting and all the wars and the this and that, there's a lot there in the story of Islam that I have real questions with, because it really looks like, and again, not saying anything about Muhammad, peace be upon him. I really think Muhammad's story and his mission got seriously adulterated, especially because he could not read nor write. He had no way of fact checking what they came up with when they were instilling or installing Islam. But I used to think that Muhammad and Yeshua and Buddha was all sent from the same place. I honestly, at this point, am really beginning to believe that Muhammad really was still um, a plant of Enlil Yahweh. I don't think that he was sent by Enki. Again, that's just me. From what I've noticed and observed, that's my opinion. I didn't necessarily get that in writing from anywhere, but the Islamic religion on paper always sounded very good, but in practice has always been very violent and misogynistic. Therefore, it really, really smacks a lot more of Lord Enlil than Lord Enki. So that I had an issue with. But the 40-day fast, back to that is something that I don't know what's going to happen during those. We're going to find out though, because I literally just ate my last meal today. I had a salad. I knew that I was going to be going into it, so I was kind of ramping down into the fast, and I wasn't going to really talk about it on the channel, but I may need to. Um, but in the past, the longest I fasted was 12 days, and I didn't know what I was doing then. I didn't keep my electrolytes and stuff up, so I'm not going to be doing a strictly water fast because I've been intermittent fasting for too long to go and do that. I will be way too deficient in certain minerals and things, so I'll be doing a modified water fast. But whenever I do fast around day 4 or 5 ish, I've always noticed that the veil gets even thinner. that's part of the reason why I hadn't done it again, because every time I get to around day 5, I used to start questioning reality and whether or not I was losing touch with, losing my, because it was getting thinner. When I was doing that, I wasn't ready, but I am ready now, and I'm fully prepared to go ahead and cross, not cross the veil. I can't cross the veil and still stay in this body, but I'm prepared to allow the rest of my spiritual gifts to kick in and allow the veil, like I said, to allow the veil to thin more, because truthfully, that's what it takes. I've been asking for those gifts to come in, but you got to purify your vessel first. You just do. Well, maybe not some people, but I know I need to. It's very hard to fully thin the veil when you on sugar and carbs and a whole bunch of chemicals and soda and cigarettes and alcohol and whatever. And I mean, I don't drink, and I gave up smoking a long time ago, but you know what I'm saying. If you got those things, all of those things, there's nothing really wrong with any of those things, but we do have to be aware that all of those things are put in our place intentionally by the powers that were for a distraction for us. They cloud our lens, they muddy our lens, they cloud our spiritual vision, they block our energy. They really do. Just like when they gave us fluoride, they've proven that really doesn't stop cavities. You know why they gave us fluoride, don't you? Well, number one, that's a whole nother story, but look that up, because fluoride was initially, it wasn't put in the water supply to stop cavities. It was put in the water supply because somebody that worked for the major aluminum manufacturer needed somewhere to dump all of that fluoride, and they couldn't put it in the landfills. So they found a way to convince somebody in Congress, without the studies to back it up, that it was that it automated to go look that up and see. It's amazing how they wound up being given the green light to put fluoride in our water supply. But the in addition to not preventing cavities, fluoride causes our pineal gland to be calcified. The powers that were very interested in making sure, by any means necessary, that as few of us woke up coming into this time that we're in right now. They've been trying to keep us from waking up for a very long time. They started giving us GMO foods. They started lacing sugar in stuff that it didn't even make no sense to put sugar in. They literally they got us mainlining sugar now. Sodas 44 grams, this and that, 100. The average, they said something like the average American consumes over 300 pounds of sugar a year. Those are all things that keep our vessels so bogged down, like Mr. Incredible, that we can't open our lenses, we can't awaken fully, we can't ascend, we cannot become Christos, which is what we're being called to do. So the long fast for me, not only is it the number of initiation, but it will break a lot of those addictions. Yeshua said can only be go, this kind can only go through prayer and fasting. That's Matthew, I forgot if it's Matthew 10:27 or Matthew 21. I can't remember, but if you type it in Google, this kind can only go through prayer and fasting, it'll tell you what the scripture is. A lot of translations have removed that verse because they don't really want you to know that part either. There are some energetic attachments on this planet that we really cannot fully break until we fast it away. So I'm going to stop messing around with it and go on and get with it, because I do understand that I need to, number one, get down to fighting weight and the best optimal health that I can. I need to be able to allow in the upgrades to my spiritual gifts, as well as some physical upgrades that I've kind of gotten a notion in meditation that may be incoming for me. And the only way I can truly receive all of those things is to clear this vessel fully and open the doorway to receive it. So I'll be doing that as well. I'll be continuing to wrap my hair when I go out and very likely, most of the time on the channel, you'll probably see some form of hair covering for me, unless I decide to put extensions or something in, which that in and of itself is another form of covering as well, when you've actually covered that hair in some other material. But but yeah, it's not something that's absolutely required unless your guides show you that it is for you. But any event, I'm going to leave that there because we've been talking about it for quite a while now. I appreciate you hanging out with me if you made it thus far. And if there's anything that you have questions about, always, of course, leave it for me. And that gives us somewhere to go in the conversation for next time. I do have, we're going to finish up the Enuma Elish this evening. And I'm not sure whether, if we don't finish Atrahasis tonight, it'll probably be tomorrow because it's only like 3 or 4 pillars or tablets in the Atrahasis. And we should be working our way to the 12th planet by either Sunday or Monday. So definitely look forward to that. And I have a reading that I'm going to get out. I think it's going to be a good one. I'm kind of feeling the divine masculine has been on my mind today. So I'm going to be obedient and sit down and see what kind of message Spirit has for our divine masculines here in the soul family. I definitely look forward to that and hope you'll join me for that one. In the meantime, in between time, as they say, I love you so very much, family. Peace and blessings to you. Namaste.